To discuss this further, I'm joined here in the studio by Doug Herbert, France 24's international affairs editor.
Afternoon.
Hi, Doug. Macron's saying this isn't a failure, but a lot of observers say that it is.
Look, as with all of these giant interventions, these military missions, which stretch over years, in this case, nearly a decade, 9 years of a French presence in Mali, there's nuance, and the devil is in the details here. Emmanuel Macron obviously is right when he asserts that it's very likely, very probable, that the state, as we know it, of Mali, the nation, would have collapsed back in 2013 had there not been a massive intervention at the time to thwart the advance, and it was very much a full frontal advance at the time of jihadists towards the capital, Bamako. So in that sense, he's right, just to say it was not a failure in the sense that it saved Mali as a country, potentially. And you could say he's very much justified in claiming that. Where perhaps, failure is it's a loaded word, charged word, where perhaps, though, the French military operation was not as well conceived as it could have been, is there's never a grand vision, a grand strategic vision. We saw this, and it's not just France. We saw this, obviously, with the U.S. in Afghanistan. Before that, we saw it the Soviets in Afghanistan. They got bogged down. They went in following up, let's remember, on a much shorter-term mission called Serval. The Serval mission was literally the mission that initially, under François Hollande, pushed back those jihadists. Then you had Barkhane coming in, almost more with not just keeping the jihadists in check, but also with that almost nation-building sense. The words nation-building were never explicitly used by the French presidency, but in the back of their minds, there was that notion, whether they want to admit it or not. And that's perhaps where they failed. And also the resources. 5,100 troops, French troops in Barkhane, it sounds like a sizable contingent deployed. At the end of the day, though, we're talking about Sahel, the region of Sahel, a vast desert nation where you have spaces where you could literally walk dozens, sometimes hundreds of miles without seeing another person. It's very hard, if nigh impossible, to cover a region that vast effectively with a limited number of troops there. And the French, let's be honest, it's not all their fault. They never really got the burden sharing, the support that they wanted. Only towards the end, 2020, when the so-called Takuba European Special Forces came in, an alliance of European forces. But it was never really up to muster, never up to snuff. And the more they did not succeed in keeping the jihadists from becoming resurgent, the more the population started to turn against the French as an ineffective force.
And France now saying it's going to shift its forces elsewhere, redeploy elsewhere in the Sahel, likely to Niger. But even if Niger does become the heart of the mission, as Macron said, how do we know there won't be a breakdown of ties there as well? Niger is a former French colony.
We don't. In fact, it's very likely, probable, that Niger will come under accusations from some of its neighbors that won't take too kindly to the fact that Niger is now welcoming French military troops on its territory. All the African nations are not, marching in lockstep and singing from the same hymn sheet here. Basically what you have is a situation where they're trying to put a brave face on a pretty bad situation. As Alassane Ouattara, the president of Ivory Coast, said yesterday, he said that the departure of the French military, along with the other international forces in the area, it leaves a big void. And other leaders in the region have acknowledged that they can't. Their forces, the so-called G5 Sahel forces, these are undertrained, poorly equipped African armies which are not up to the challenge of driving back jihadists. They said, we can't do this on our own. They need some international component to help them. So they've been very upfront about the challenges they face, which they see as almost mission impossible without international help. I don't see how this region, as it is with this current redeployment, maybe in Niger, a little in Senegal, we have troops there. We have French troops staying in the Sabre Special Forces in Burkina Faso. All of that, will it be enough to plug massive holes? And the jihadists are already taking advantage of porous borders along the southern rim of the Sahel, going into the so-called Gulf of Guinea. So it's a really heavy lift.
And let's take a step back, take a broader look at the situation. There is an EU-AU summit in Brussels today, and in this new realignment that's occurring, are African and European leaders on the same page? You just said that there seems to be a fair amount of diverging opinions here.
Once again, there's nuance. This is not, this is not a very clear-cut issue here. The Europeans always talk up these African summits, and how many French presidents have we heard, one after another, stepping up to the podium and saying, we are going to fundamentally change the nature of France's colonial-era relationship with Africa, which has persisted stubbornly to this day in varying shape and form. We're going to put an end to it, draw a line under that chapter in history. We now want to showcase Africa as a land of opportunity, deal with it as an equal partner on the world stage. That isn't really happening right now, and meanwhile, other competitors are stepping in: China, Russia, Japan, the U.S.
All right, International Affairs editor Doug Herbert, thank you for that analysis.